talked last time the problem of anything that goes on the stage, and in a sense, in the movies as well, although it's more concrete in the movies. The problem is that we're trying to build a dream in midair and have people believe in that dream while they're sitting there wide awake and knowing I'm in a theater.
Right.
Whether it's a live theater or a movie. Everybody in the movie who goes to see a Harry Potter movie knows they're there. They're sitting and eating the popcorn that cost them $10. But things happen that make them forget that in the way we talked about the suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, they lose themselves in the story.
Right. They forget what it is that they're actually doing in the way a daydreamer forgets what he is doing actually.
Yeah.
And gets lost into the fantasy of his imagination. Okay, so the basic thing I want you to hold on to and never forget is that there's no play that's like any other play. It's just like people. They're not alike. They are not mirror images of each other, and even the mirror image of something is backwards. So even the mirror image is not the
Right.
same thing.
So it's almost like a psychiatrist going in to meet a patient for the first time.
Yes,
You have to diagnose.
exactly. You have to look at this and say, what do I got here? What kind of animal is this? What do I have by the tail? Now, how do you do that? What process should you use? The first time, you just read it as an audience. The second time, you say, well, let me read it again and see if my initial perceptions hold, or if in reading it the first time, I didn't get everything. The third time, you have to, first of all, judge whether your first two perceptions of reading it the first time and the second time coincide. And then you begin to say, well, what is this about? What central thing is the author getting at? Now, you know the play, I'm sure, of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. If you read that the first time, what you get is this sense of these two people who are always yelling and screaming and fighting with each other. In that play, for example, you don't say, what he's getting at is blank. You say, George and Martha, or a couple who've been married for some time, and she's always picking at him, and then he comes back and picks at her, and she seems to be wearing the pants of the family, and telling him what to do, and berating him all the time because he's a nobody, and disappointment for her, and disappointment to himself in life. And, oh, by the way, we have some guests coming, which he doesn't want. But it makes no difference, because she wears the pants, and she says the guests are coming, they're supposed to be coming. This is what you get. You get a sense of these people are fighting and everything else all the way through. Now, do you know the play well enough to state what its theme is? You've more than read it once. You may have read it several times. You've seen it in the movies?
Mm-hmm.
Or you've seen it on stage?
Yeah.
All right.
Both. Yeah.
So, with that experience, each of those experiences, depending upon how it was produced in the movie or on the stage,
Yeah.
and whether or not that was at all coinciding with what the play itself means. But if, to the degree that those things that you've seen are coinciding, you now have an idea of what the play's about.
Well, it seems that the spine is related to this kid that they've made up.
Right.
And that she seems to need more than he does. They have no children. They've made up this child. They have this little game between them with this child. And it seems like both of them are very dissatisfied with where they're at. Maybe in some sense she's dissatisfied that she doesn't have a child and she's infertile. And so it's a love story, but of course they lash out at each other and they blame each other. But you get the sense they would never be apart despite all of that. And so it seems like the spine to me is this murder of this child through the course of the play. The other two characters are incidental to help along that plot. The two visitors, but he kills the baby, and so this imaginary child of theirs, and it seems to me that when they're at the end of the play, she's just destroyed by this act, which is in itself ludicrous because it's an imaginary baby to start out with, but yet it has so much meaning to her. And so it seems to me that they're on this destructive course of lying to themselves about the fact that they have their childhood, which they don't, and not being able to come to grips with the fact that they're not everything they have hoped that they would be, both of them, George with his career, or with perhaps the home life, and being a mother, being fertile and everything. So it seems to me that it's the mendacity has to be destroyed, the lies that are between them, to somehow find some equilibrium in the relationship. Now,
What do you mean by equilibrium?
it's that they can get past the hostilities, this poison that's between them, and that maybe they can go on together with some help between the two of them. Although you can hardly imagine them not being the perfect couple, but it seems to me that what changes in the play is that he takes this lie away from her. That's the main change in the play. That's the arc. They have this lie. He just comes up with this elaborate plan to kill the baby because he seems to have had it. He seems to be at wit's end with her and where their relationship is. And there seems to be an acceptance at the end of the play. They go up the steps and they almost come together. She's exhausted. She's mentally and physically exhausted. So it seems that the playwright's saying something about the fact that when you start working on lies, it is poison. It can poison your life. It can poison your relationship. One lie is built on another lie, is built on another lie, and it's almost like a new beginning for them, I think, when they go up the steps. But she's terrified to go on without that baby. It's just George. It's just the two of them. And it seems to me that's what he wants. He wants it to just be the two of them. So if the play is about the fact that the lies that people create in their life to hold on to some illusion can ultimately swallow them up and destroy them, that seems to be the message. So as a director, not an easy task, but to try to get that message across.
All right. Now, I didn't obviously count the sentences, but you had a number of sentences
Yes.
in your description.
Yes. Did you say to be terse?
No. But this is the point. You can describe any play that you know from a directorial point of view.
Exactly.
And Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf is about two people who, as you say, have had a relationship built on lies. The lies have poisoned their relationship. And for the relationship to get back on a real footing, they must expunge the lie. Now, what that even more simply is life cannot proceed built on things which are not true. If you know that that is what that play is about, that starts you to realize as you read through it what things that certain people say are true and what things are not true. Because certainly that play is 90% lies.
I mean, the dialogue, what's being said by George and Martha.
Right. And by Nick and Honey. And Nick and Honey, by the way, aren't incidental. You have to know. I'm not going to spend the whole time talking about Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. Maybe later on we'll talk about that more. But Nick and Honey must be there because the way they function in the play causes the things that function to function. Now, if you know that central theme, life cannot proceed upon lies, only poison do. Then you start to recognize, as you read it, what's a lie and what isn't a lie. And when that's directed, you have to direct the actor so that the audience knows that that person is lying now. Now, there are a number of ways of lying, as it's just outright, I'm telling something on purpose that's not true. But there are other ways of lying too. Under duress, I say something just to get the pressure off. That's a lie. It's not addressing what's causing the pressure, even if what I say is factually true. For instance,
Is that sort of like when people smile to cover up a hurt or make a joke?
well, that is a kind of a lie, yes. But this is for instance, that has to do with dialogue. A man is having an affair. He's meeting his lover at 6:30 after they both get off work at her apartment. He goes, he has sex with her till 8:30. On the way home, he goes into Joe's bar. He gets home to his wife. His wife said, I thought you were coming home tonight. He said, no, I was at Joe's bar. He was at Joe's bar, partially. But that in itself is a lie to deal with the stress of her now asking the guy where he was.
Right. It's a half-truth, right?
There is no such thing as a half-truth.
But he was at Joe's bar.
A half-truth is a lie. Truth is like existence. It's either there or it isn't. There's nothing half in existence. If you have an imaginary steak when you're hungry, it's not going to help you in it. It has to be a real steak. If it's only, by the way, a bite of a real steak, it's already real. And then if it's dealt with as if I can only have a bite because that's all that's here, nonetheless, the person will take that and deal with it. If it is represented as a full steak and it's only a bite, that's already another kind of lie. And people, especially in New York, this is the first time I really ran into this in my life, but especially in New York, people are worried about the portions, size of a portion. You call this a steak? To them, it's a lie, unless it's of a certain magnitude. There's a famous example of the thing I was just talking about, though, that you can put everything that the play is essentially into a sentence. It's a famous example, and the only problem with it is it's wrong. But in Olivier's Hamlet, at the beginning of it, he's there musing, and Olivier says, voiceover, this is a story about a man who could not make up his mind. This play's not about at all about a man who could make up his mind. That's asinine. But what he's trying to do, and failing, because however important an actor he may have been, he wasn't much of a director, although he directed all the time. Any director would know that's not what the play's about. It's not about a man who couldn't make up his mind. He's never in a position of not making up his mind. Actually, he's constantly making up his mind, and quickly too. It's just that in the next moment he makes up his mind in a different direction. Once I read a supposedly psychoanalytic criticism of Hamlet, which said the boy is a juvenile delinquent. There is some value in that, although he's not a juvenile delinquent. What the value is that he responds the way he responds because he is young and impulsive, as young people are. And he is constantly being led to circumstances which are beyond his control, which cause him to have impulsive responses. Two teenage boys walking down a street in the middle of New Jersey, some town in the middle of New Jersey, grew or somewhere civilized, from nice homes, good students, pass a convertible with the top down and the keys in it, may very well steal the car for a joyride. And the impulse hits them, boom, and they're gone. If they're 30, they're not going to do it. But if they're teenage, and for Hamlet, extended age, quite likely to do it. Because the mind at the time, the mind of a teenager is a very interesting thing, by the way, on Frontline, called Inside the Teenage Brain. And if you're ever directing things with teenage characters in it, you should watch that. Because the main reality of a teenager is that their frontal lobe is in actual physical reconfiguration at that time of their life. And part of the thing that happens is they lose their ability to discriminate and recognize consequences of actions. Discriminate between appropriate and non-appropriate actions and recognize the consequence of their actions.
That's why a lot of the young die from taking risks.
Yeah, exactly.
Swimming when clearly. He
Right,
didn't
right,
go
right.
swimming, diving into something.
Right, where they don't know that it's,
What's
don't
at
realize.
the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. 3 feet under is a ledge sticking out. They bust their head on it. All they see is the pool and pool of water running off the side of the
Right.
mountain.
It seems like every high school loses, some kid at some point to, a spine injury by doing that.
Right.
It's just,
So this is not a story about a man who cannot make up his mind. He has made it up from the beginning.
the funeral of his father or the marriage of his mother or both.
Well, both of those have happened prior to the play. So, I mean, he's going home. And the things that have happened with the death of his father and the marriage of his mother to his uncle do not happen in the play. They are backstory, as it's called. But not to get too much into Hamlet and take us in the wrong direction. What Olivier is trying to do is what every director has to be able to do. He just does it badly with that play. But nonetheless, he is trying to do the right thing, which is, what is this play about in a sense? And it's